quietly. We're okay with that. Right? So like I said, I'm Mary Bleckler. I work at the hospital. I have 2 titles. I'm the community champion. That's a funny title, right? I mean, I always feel like I should have this part of the cape on. But just to get out and do community outreach is what that job does. The other 2 days I do ultrasound, so diagnostic on the clinical side. Okay? So resources to recovery. This is actually our first substance abuse and addiction conference, so we really appreciate you being here. We're very grateful for everyone who took time to spend the day with us. We hope we can share a lot of great information and offer a lot of support and resources to those who need it. Before we were called Resources to Recovery, it was called the SAC, or Substance Addiction and Awareness Consortium. And this was started in 2017 by the hospital in an effort to review and improve the prescribing practices on opioids at the hospital within the health system. Also to partner with local entities to help reduce opioid abuse within our community. And that is why we are here. And that is what we want to do. We want to move forward as Resources to Recovery and offer this to the community and help make a difference. With Resources to Recovery, these are our goals and objectives. Real simple. We want to improve the prescribing practices, so we want to keep that up at the hospital. And I invite you, if you have any questions on how that is monitored or how they are doing that, you can talk to Laura Fowler, the director of inpatient pharmacy at the hospital. She's here. She should be speaking today, and she has a wealth of knowledge about that. So I invite you to talk to her. Also, we're going to keep the prescription drug program going. We do that twice a year. We do it in the spring and in the fall. And it's very successful, and we're going to keep that moving forward. Now, that's prescription drugs that we're taking back. Also, to continue the Narcan education and distribution. Bill Kramer and the health department, Jenny's here from the health department, they've been fantastic and to keep that going and moving forward. And then we want to partner closely and work closely with public and private schools, because we do know that everything that we have heard and everything we have learned, that prevention is going to be our best option to fight the addiction. And also we want to form some kind of family support group, because we think that it's real important to treat the families, because they're going through this with the person that's addicted to either drugs, alcohol, whatever it is. Okay? So those are some of our goals and objectives. You might have seen the sign out front. Our vision, the Resources to Recovery, is we want to stand together. We want to unite various community partners, like I said, work together and reach out, and we want to raise awareness. We want to implement programs where we can educate and prevent. We want to offer support and promote recovery. And then we want to start a conversation. That sounds like it's easy, but if you know anything about addiction or mental health issues, it's not an easy conversation to have. So we want to make sure that we can start this conversation and people know that they can talk about it, and we can reduce the isolation that's felt by the person that's going through this. And then stop the stigma. Stigma's huge. So I put on here, it's one of our biggest barriers, and then the definition in the dictionary, I said a negative and often unfair beliefs that a society or group of people have about something. We all do it, we're human. You can hear a word and you associate something with that word. That's just who we are, that's how we're made up, and that's the way it is. We want to change that. We want to break down these barriers, and we want to let people know that they're not alone and it's okay to ask for help, no matter what. Addiction. So that's a big word, right? So I want everybody to think. Just close your eyes for a minute and think. When you hear that word addiction, what comes to mind? Now go ahead and open them. It could be any of this, right? It could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be social media, it could be gambling, smoking, kids on their gamers, adults playing games, maybe shopping online. And any of these things can be addiction. But that's not what comes to mind, is it? We always go to the drugs or the alcohol. That's just what we think of. So we want to go further and break addiction down, and we take off the last part of it, and we have addict. So now I invite you again to close your eyes. If you would, just listen to the word addict and what comes to mind. What picture you have in your mind when you hear addict. Because we're all alike. We all do it. Open your eyes and tell me if it's any of these things. Are these what you think? I mean, you don't think of somebody sitting at home playing a game, right? We're not thinking of somebody out shopping online and spending tons of money or things like that. This is just the way we are programmed. This is what we think. Again, close your eyes. Addict. See if those same images come to mind. I invite you to open them. Does this come to mind? This little guy? A cute little baby, right? Do you think when his mom and dad had him that they held him and they said, "Gee, son, when you grow up, I hope you're an addict"? That's what I want for you. No, it happens. It just happens. And it did happen to this little guy. And this little guy shared with me his first mugshot, the first time he was arrested, and his last mugshot. With this information, I share this because as a parent who has gone through a child with addiction, we all struggle with it. We're all going, at some point it's going to touch your life. We're not immune to it. It can happen to any of us. And Eric is here to tell you, and I worked for his parents for a long time, and I would have been the first one to say, not my kids. Nope. We don't drink, we don't smoke, we don't do that. But it does happen. So I invite Brandon Moulton, whose pictures these are, to stand up, give him a hand. He is in recovery. And it takes a lot of courage for someone in recovery to come up and tell their story. And I know Brandon is nervous, but I know Brandon is going to do a great job. And again, thank you so much for being here. Brandon Moulton.
All right, so everybody just needs to erase the baby picture from your eyes. All right, I am nervous. Just give me a couple seconds, a couple minutes maybe, and I'll calm down. So my name's Brandon Moulton. I was born and raised in St. John. I was just a normal kid. I went to Valley Catholic. Growing up, going through school, all the kids in my class, they all liked to play sports. I was never that person. I wasn't into it like they were. So as I went through school, I kind of felt like an outcast, felt left out, kind of by myself. Once I got to be about 11 or 12, I started hanging out with the wrong people. And when I say this, I'm not putting any blame on anyone. But my dad, he got a job that he was going to be traveling. He said he'd only be gone a couple days out of the month. Well, a couple days turned into about 3 weeks out of the month. Dad wasn't around. That was one of the people that I hung out with. We went fishing, hunting, all that stuff. So when he was gone, I kind of drifted off and really started hanging out with the wrong people, doing the wrong things. I started skipping school at a young age. I think I was 13, 14. I no longer wanted anything to do with school. I started smoking weed, drinking, sneaking out at night. By the time I was 14, I got my first minor possession of alcohol. I got put on juvenile probation. By the time I was 15, that probation, I got so many violations in between there that I got put on house arrest. By the time I was 15, I left one night when I was on house arrest when I shouldn't have. I got high, drunk, you name it. I got followed by a cop, and I ran inside real fast. Well, obviously I came back outside. Me and the officer got in an altercation, and I landed myself my first felony, assault charge on a cop. I then was transferred to Farmington Juvenile Detention Center. I stayed there for 68 days and got transferred to Division of Youth Services for 6.5 months. While I was in Division of Youth Services, I was so far behind in school, so I ended up having to get my GED. Well, that was my choice. If I went back to school, I would have been there until I was 22 before I graduated, so I opted to get my GED. I turned 16 in Division of Youth Services. My dad had a heart attack on my 16th birthday. It was not a good time. So I got out of Division of Youth Services. I did good for a little while. I started hanging out with insane people, thinking I could not do what they're doing. Didn't work out for me. By the time I was 19, I got my first DWI. I lost my license for 60 days, hardship or whatever. It cost me like $7,000 altogether. I did okay still for a little while. Then I got a call from a buddy of mine one evening. I hate talking about this. His name was Tyler Kent. He called me one night. He was real depressed, and he just needed somebody to hang out with, somebody to keep him company. Instead of going and hanging out with him and keeping him company, I made up some excuse saying that, I had to work the next day or whatever. Really, all I was doing was getting high instead of being there for a friend. And then December 17th of 2012, I got a call from another friend of mine saying that Tyler ended up killing himself. And I still carry a lot of guilt, obviously, because it's upsetting to talk about. I was more worried about getting high than being there for somebody I loved and cared about. And that's what the drugs did to me. So after this, I kind of spiraled out of control. I got my second DWI in almost the same exact spot, coming home from a benefit of his. And I lost my license for a year. I had to get an ignition interlock installed. I was supposed to have it for 6 months, had it for a year. Well, having that ignition interlock, you have to blow into it just to start your vehicle. So instead of drinking, I ended up just taking pills, and I eventually graduated from pain pills and Xanax to taking a lot of Xanax, and I ended up trying heroin for the first time. And it didn't take long. It was probably about 6 months. I still had the ignition interlock. And it gives you blow into it to start it, and then like every 5 to 10 minutes it randomly goes off. And if you don't blow into it, the horn and headlights and everything flash. Well, there was one evening I was not paying attention. It went off, so I stopped at a stop sign. And I had to wait for it to reboot so I could blow back into it. Well, I ended up getting high on heroin and Xanax, and I just fell asleep almost instantly. I got woke up by a law cop. And I just had a flashlight in my eyes. Obviously, I had everything right there. I got caught, so I got another felony in possession of controlled substance. A few of them, really. I went to jail. I was in jail for about 6 days, and my mom, bless her heart, thought she was doing what was good for me, but really it wasn't. She spent a bunch of money and bonded me out. So we go through court, it took months. I ended up getting on felony probation. And I figured, once probation gets here, I'll stop using it. I'll be able to get through it. It don't work like that. So I was on probation for maybe 6 months or so, and I thought I was helping out a friend. I sold her some heroin. She got caught, wrote a statement on me. So I caught a worse felony charge of distribution of controlled substance. Somehow, I don't know why, it took about 3 weeks for the warrant to go through for them to arrest me. But in that time, my probation officer was making me do weekends. I did 3 weekends before they finally handed me that warrant that kept me in jail. I spent 90 days in St. John County. And I don't know if any of you here have been in jail for a long period of time, but it is not fun at all. I had to come off all them drugs while I was in there. Xanax, heroin, you name it, I was coming off all of it. I was crapping all over myself. I was throwing up all over myself. I was getting made fun of. It was a terrible time. It took me about almost the whole stay before I could actually sleep right, eat right, everything go back to normal. My mind still was far from right. So I get out of St. John County and I got put on a really good program that's called drug court. And I somehow got lucky and never got convicted of any of these felonies. I got a SIS probation, so suspended imposition of sentencing. Not sure how when I caught the other charge they didn't convict me, but they rolled it all over in the drug court. I got extremely lucky. So anyway, I get on this program called drug court, which keeps you extremely busy. You got extreme guidelines that you have to follow or you go back to jail. I had to do a bunch of classes. They basically overwhelmed your week. Make you go to meetings, NAAA, get your paper signed, which was super embarrassing because the people there only thought I was there just to get my paper signed. So as I'm going through drug court, I already made up my mind when I was in jail that I'm going to do whatever I have to do to fix what's going on in my life because I didn't want to live like that anymore. It's miserable. So September 11th of 2015 was when I went to jail last. I almost had 7 years clean and sober. I have not relapsed one time. Not saying that it doesn't happen because it does happen. I've just been super, extremely blessed. And in that time of my recovery, I have bought my own house. I bought a really nice truck. I got a Harley. I had my first son in 2020. He's about to turn 3 in January, and he is awesome. I just got married in June. My life now, compared to them, is just day and night. I had a lot of help along the way. I think an advantage that I've had over other people is that I had a lot of good people in my life. I always have, even through all my addiction. I just kind of strayed away. They were always trying to help me. I just think that's a huge thing. When people don't have anybody, it makes it a lot harder. And then when they have people judging them, they just don't even want to, they just shut down. I know I did. Even the ones I knew, loved, and cared about me, I was a mess. But I'm really grateful to be here today. I'll be completely honest. I've known about this for a couple months, and I just did not want to do it because it's super hard for me to get in front of people and talk about these things. It was just, I really appreciate it. I'm glad that my gut told me to just do it anyway. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions for me? Okay. Yes. It does help me big time when I'm speaking. Major Jason Shoddy sitting back there, he gave me this. And I use it every time I do any kind of public speaking. It really helps. I've spoken at their graduations. I went to Valley one time and spoke, I think, 5th through 12th. It was really awesome. It really helps. I don't know. That's one thing that I forgot to touch on is I did I'm Catholic, which there might not be anybody in here that is, or a lot of people that are. I never really, growing up, I was forced to go to church and believe in God and this and that, and it kind of pushed me away from it. When I was going through my really rough, hard time, my dad, that job that he got was in the window and door industry. I'm going somewhere with this, just might take a second. So he knew a guy, his name's Mike Fleeg, that owned his own company, installed windows and doors. Well, my dad got me a job with him. Well, that last time that I went to jail, I was working for him, and he was out of town, actually, Colorado, elk hunting. He was supposed to be there for 10 days. Well, I got arrested, and he had to drive all the way back. And, yeah, so that ended really badly. And then when I was on drug court, I was working at Love's for a while, and Mike kept contacting me because he was so busy. He's like, because he knew I was doing better. He's like, hey, why don't you come back to work for me? Why don't you come back to work for me? So I did. Well, like a month into it, he did this weekend retreat called Cursillo, and he mentioned it to me, and I looked, and I still was unsure about the whole God and religion thing, and because I just wasn't there. he was telling me about it and how awesome it was and how it changed his life. And I looked at him and I said, listen, that's great. I'm glad it was cool for you, but I don't ever want you to bring it up to me again, because I don't know how I feel. I don't even know if I believe in God. And this is me in recovery. Like I'm completely sober. He's like, all right, well. Then Jason goes through it. Jason Schott. He gets out of it and he messaged me and he goes, I'm not asking you to do it. I'm telling you, you have to do it. So I did it, and it changed my life. And I realized that everything that happened in my life, why I'm standing here right now and I'm alive and I'm talking to all of you, is because of God. A higher power, whatever you believe in or don't believe in, I know for a fact I would not be alive if it wasn't for God. So, right, that just went all over the place.
Do you feel that having a supportive employer helped you along the way as well?
I do. I firmly believe that God had a plan for both of us, because we've both been huge supporters of each other, and I've been working with him for about 6 years now. Yeah, he's a great guy. It helped me a lot. He gave me a second chance when he didn't have to, and it hit the ground running.
Anybody else? Is there anything anyone could have done or said that would have helped you make recovery earlier?
Absolutely not. There's nothing you can do, say, tough love, all the love. It does not matter. It's up to the individual. If they're not ready, they're not going to change. It doesn't matter if you send them across the country. It's not going to work until they're ready. You could spend $1 million. It totally sucks. It does. Because I think about it all the time. I'm just like, why was I so stupid? Why did I not just listen to these people that have been there? They know. Just had to learn the hard way. And I'm terrified for my kids because of it. So hopefully I can steer them in the right direction.
As far as you're steering your kids in the right direction, you're right. There's nothing you can do, or any of us can do, for their decisions that they make. But I encourage you to continue spiritually with them, to lead them in that direction. Because this drug problem we have, and I've been messing around with it and involved in it for 10 years now. We're not going to arrest this problem away. We're not going to. We can't do anything about the drugs are going to come. And what we got to work on is I like that, what you said earlier, is educating the kids, even with that, because the drugs are not a respecter of persons. I don't care who you are, how influenced you are. My encouragement is that, and it is to think about, because unless somebody's heart and mind changes, you'll struggle with addiction all your life. So it's very difficult. But I encourage you and thank you for your testimony, because that is the best thing in the world that you can do. And I encourage you to continue as you have opportunity to testify to you, for somebody else, because your testimony is what helps. That helps people. Thank you.
That's another hard part about doing it, especially when I was talking to kids. It's like these kids have no idea what I'm talking about. They might remember me, but they might not. I just feel like it's hard to, like now the life that I live, it's hard to, I'm just a normal person. I don't feel like I'm anything special. I just feel like I'm living the life that I was supposed to live. I learned a lot along the way. So it's hard to get in front of people and just, I don't know how to explain it, but I just feel like I'm just a normal person trying to live a normal life, if there is a normal life.
What's normal?
Yeah.
If you figure it out, let me know.
Anybody else? Thank you so much for your
Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon, for that. Thank you, Mary, for that introduction as well. My name is Estrella Carmona. I serve as the contact and as the secretary for the Community Services Forum. You either communicate with me me or received an email from me in the past, it's because I do that. I am a county engagement specialist in nutritional health education with the University of Missouri Extension, so those two things go well together. I work with Mary on this initiative, and we lead the Resources to Recovery group, which is a committee of the Community Services Forum. So I would like to welcome and thank all of you for being here today. This is very important to us, and we know it's important to you as well, and that's why you're present with us today. So next up, our next speaker is Elizabeth Connors, and her topic is Missouri overdose trends and respond efforts, and I do have a brief introduction. Okay, Liz Connors is a licensed clinical social worker, certified substance abuse counselor, and clinical program manager with 13 years of experience in both clinical and research settings addressing substance use, mental health, criminal justice, and the opioid epidemic. So she is just a stellar speaker for us today. Thank you so much for being here and bringing your knowledge and your experience to share with our rural community. So please come on up. We'll get you hooked up.
Good morning. Thank you guys so much for inviting me out. It's really good. Like that's a tough act to follow. My name is Liz Connors. I am the Director of First Responder and Public Health Programming at the Missouri Institute of Mental Health. So I was asked to come out here just to talk a little bit about data and some overdose trends, and I'm going to touch just a little bit on naloxone administration and distribution in Missouri. I think it's really important to keep in mind because I struggle sometimes when talking about data because it becomes this very big, very broad numbers on a map kind of thing. And I think what's really important to keep in mind is that every data point that we talk about is at random, right? And we are really fortunate that when we look at the data in Missouri, we're trending in a positive direction, and there are people like him who are surviving. But there's a lot of what I'm going to talk about that people who are unfortunately not as lucky as he was. So not to be a bummer, but. So this is just a quick agenda, so we kind of know what we're talking about. This is mostly to keep me organized, because I'll go off on a tangent somewhere. So I'm going to talk to you guys first about the MIMH Addiction Science team. So the Missouri Institute of Mental Health is the research arm of the University of Missouri in St. Louis. So I actually work for UMSL, and within MIMH, I am part of the Addiction Science team. So there are 4 major projects that we run out of our Addiction Science team at MIMH. Some of them you may have heard of, some probably not. The first one is the State Opioid Response Grant, or SOR. That is, if there are any of them that you've heard of, that is probably it. It is a statewide initiative that provides treatment, medication assistance, recovery, housing, and supportive services for individuals who are opioid dependent and uninsured. That project has been around since 2016 and keeps growing and evolving, and there are several other initiatives that are funded through that. But that is definitely our largest and, in my opinion, probably most successful project. Next is the Connecting the Dots project, which is one that I run. And that one provides occupational safety training to first responders working in the opioid epidemic. The ENACT project, expanding naloxone access and community trainings, that is more of a community-facing project that provides overdose education and naloxone training to individuals or treatment providers, health centers, basically anybody that's not a first responder that may administer Narcan at some point. And then the Center Initiative is community-based participatory research, which basically means we're not doing a project, we are talking to members of the community and asking what that community needs. And the Center Initiative focuses on Black men in North City and North County, where there are disproportionate rates of overdose deaths. And so basically going into that community and saying, what are we missing and how can we better serve you? And then a new project, which I just put on there today when I got here. I just got it on Friday, so I'm excited. Is MOPORT Missouri Coordinating Overdose Response Partnerships and Support. That initiative will begin in October, and that is another first responder project, and that one provides anti-stigma training to first responders, particularly in rural Missouri, including St. John. So I'll be around. I'm pretty excited. Pretty excited though. But it's important to note that all of these projects are done in close partnership with the Missouri Department of Mental Health or the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services. We cannot do anything we do at MIMH without those partnerships. Please, if you don't hear me say anything else, hear that. I don't want them dead. So this is just, look, they pay my salary, I need them to be happy. So this is some statewide drug overdose death trends. Unfortunately, this is kind of a grim picture. So you can see the line graph to the left here. This is 2019 to 2021. This red line at the top, way at the top, is the St. Louis metropolitan area. St. Louis drives the state of Missouri in terms of overdose deaths. And then everything else you can kind of see at the bottom. It does. Okay, so this line here, if you guys can see that, this blue line, dark blue line, is the southeastern region, which includes St. Genevieve County. So that kind of gives you a sense of where you're at. Kind of in the middle, trending upwards a little bit in terms of overdose deaths, unfortunately. So these are some, oh, the color didn't show up very well. These are some drug-specific overdose deaths as of last year. On my screen, there are the columns of different colors. I don't know if they are for you guys. This first column is opioid-involved overdose deaths. So you can see the increase from 2020 to 21. Again, in the southeastern region, which is where we're considered, there was a 25% increase from 2020 to 21 in drug-specific and opioid-involved deaths. And then a 21% increase in stimulant-involved deaths for that same time period. The one area where there was a decrease was opioid and stimulant combined deaths. We are seeing in Missouri in general an increase in opioid and stimulant combined deaths, and the reason for that, the primary reason for that, is we are noticing an increase in stimulant contamination, which basically means that as meth and cocaine are coming into the country, they are being contaminated with fentanyl. And then when we get street-level dealers, they do not realize oftentimes that there are opioids in that supply. And so they're selling to a person who thinks that they are purchasing meth, who thinks that they're purchasing cocaine, and is unknowingly ingesting opiates. And because they're unknowingly ingesting it, often there is not Narcan available to reverse an overdose because they're not expecting to need it. So that's just kind of a bird's eye view. And then you can see here 2020 versus 21 drug-specific increases. So there was an increase in synthetic fentanyl, a slight decrease in opioids, which when we say opioids in this context, we mean heroin. And basically in Missouri, we're seeing almost no heroin, almost entirely fentanyl at this point. About 93% of the drug supply, of the opiate drug supply in St. Louis is fentanyl. 75% roughly statewide opioids are fentanyl, or fentanyl and something else. And then again, we can see increases in stimulants, amphetamines, cocaine, and again, stimulant and opioids combined. So unfortunately, it's kind of a grim picture. And again, it's why stories like Brandon's are so important for us to hear, because we can see this and go, oh man, nothing's working. Nothing's going well. And then we see people like him who say, no, I'm married and I have a child and I have a career and things are getting better, and it doesn't have to be this way for everybody. So here's St. Genevieve County. So this is 2017 through 2020. We didn't have data for 2021. So you can see a slight increase over the last 3 years in particular. And we've seen that statewide. COVID has had a lot to do with that. In Missouri, we saw about a 30% increase statewide of opioid-involved overdose deaths during 2020, primarily because people were not able to access their treatment providers, their medication providers, their churches, their recovery support groups. All of the places where people normally go for their recovery support were, for one reason or another, inaccessible at the beginning of COVID. So we are slowly starting to return to where our pre-pandemic levels were. We haven't gone down from there, but right now we're kind of leveling off to about 2019 rates. Since 2018, there have been 20 overdose field reports submitted from St. Genevieve County. And basically what those reports are, we ask that when people administer Narcan or IM naloxone, they complete a 3-4 minute reporting survey that basically says, did you know the person? What zip code did it happen in? Did you call 911? Did they survive? So we've had 20 of those reports completed. 19 of those 20 individuals survived. So something is working. Now, I will say the really important thing for us at MIMH about those overdose field reports is that is how we get the data to justify bringing money to communities where we know that there's a need. So we always encourage people, if you are administering Narcan at any point, to complete this field report, regardless of whether or not you know the person, because then I can go to the state of Missouri or the feds and say, look at what's going on in St. Genevieve County. We need to support them. There is a need in this community, and we would like to respond to that need. So, unfortunately, it's one of those things, no data, no money. So just a couple of drug toxicity trends that we've noticed in the last couple of months, especially in Missouri. Some of you may be familiar with this, maybe not so much. And the first one is xylazine, otherwise known as Tranq. So we have heard reports of xylazine being in the drug supply intermittently in St. Louis, off and on for the past 18 to 24 months. It has surfaced quite a bit in the last 6 to 8 weeks. And xylazine is a tranquilizer, and it's being used as a cutting agent in fentanyl. It is not meant for human consumption at all, ever. So we know when somebody has been using xylazine unintentionally because those individuals will they'll present with skin lesions or ulcers. And if anybody who works in the substance use field remembers Crocodile a few years ago, it's not like that. Xylazine, it looks like it's kind of coming up from the inside, like it's eating holes in the skin. It's really, people are getting really bad infections. It's very painful. And Narcan or naloxone doesn't work on xylazine because xylazine is not an opioid. I have yet to see xylazine or Tranq by itself. It's usually, like I said, contaminated with fentanyl. So what will happen is a person will consume those substances. They will go into an overdose state. Narcan will be administered. Hopefully in time the person will survive. But they may have some scarring or some issues with their skin as a result of that contamination. The other one that we're starting to see in Kansas City, and it's just popped up in St. Louis in the last 3 weeks, is called benzodope. If any of you are familiar with Vice, the show Vice, they have a really interesting piece on benzodope. And it's a combination of synthetic fentanyl and synthetic benzos. So it's all lab made. And because both of those substances are central nervous system depressants, there is a much higher risk that an individual using that will almost immediately overdose. Those substances are normally a purple or a blue color. Occasionally they may show up as an orange or a pink, but it's usually purple and blue. And the scary thing about the benzodope is people who are using it will use and immediately go out. Like there just isn't even a chance for people to respond. And there have been reports in St. Louis, and there have been some sightings in Kansas City in the last month. So, yeah, thank you.
Are those all being injected, or are there many different ways of storing it, pills, when you say purple or blue?
I mean, either way, if people are using it either way, as with any kind of opioid injection, drug use is going to be the highest likelihood of overdose because it's hitting faster. And with the xylazine, we see the most damage to somebody's skin when it's being injected because it's eating away basically where the vein is. But it can be consumed any way that any other drug can. I wish I had better news for you. Here we go, naloxone, that's better. Show of hands who's familiar with naloxone or Narcan? Everybody? Beautiful. Okay, so I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this then. So at MIMH, we distribute both nasal, which is most commonly identified as Narcan, and then we also will distribute IM naloxone, and the reason that we do both is twofold. One, the IM naloxone is more cost effective, and two, particularly for people who use drugs, they are sometimes more comfortable with the IM naloxone, and it does work a little bit faster than the nasal. We give out both because not everybody is comfortable using an IM syringe. Both forms are legal, they're safe, they work on all opioids. As we're seeing some of these stronger analogs, it is becoming more common that we need to administer more than one dose of naloxone. And how it works, very, very short. So basically naloxone is a heavier molecule than the opioid, so it'll when responding to an overdose, it'll basically kick the opioid off the brain receptor and replace it with naloxone. So it doesn't make the high, quote unquote, go away. Opioids are still sort of floating around in the brain, but it gives people an opportunity to breathe again, right? An overdose is essentially the lack of respiration. So Narcan is what helps to restore that breathing. So naloxone works average of an hour, 30 to 90 minutes, but we say average of an hour. And so what that means is that when we are administering naloxone to a person who is experiencing an overdose, we want to watch them. Particularly with some of these stronger analogs, it's possible, although not likely, it's possible that a person may slip back into an overdose state once that naloxone has worn off, and we may have to administer naloxone again. So we want to keep an eye on them. We encourage people to call 911. If an individual declines transport to the hospital, that is totally up to them, but we at least want EMS to check them out and make sure that they're okay. So MIH has really become the distribution hub in Missouri. So between, what was it, July 1st of 2020 and January 31st of 22, we distributed just shy of 47,000 units of naloxone across the state of Missouri. We have done quite a bit more since then, but I don't have the pretty map since then. And we have, like I said earlier, we have multiple funding streams. We are not particularly worried about being able to supply folks. If you are somebody that is already being supplied and you are in need of more naloxone from us, let me know before you leave. If you are an entity that doesn't currently get Narcan but is interested, come talk to me. We'll see what we can work out. Sheriff's Department. Email me, law enforcement, fire, EMS that wants Narcan. Have them call me. And then these are just a couple of laws regarding naloxone that people often ask about, because the question is this legal? Is this safe for me to carry? Yes. There is first responder administrative immunity, which is specific for law enforcement, fire, and EMS, which basically says that if they are administering naloxone in good faith and something happens, it doesn't go well, they're not going to be sued for it. Often I'll have chiefs ask me about that. They don't want their officers to get in trouble. The 911 Good Samaritan law. So it requires law enforcement to provide resources to overdose survivors, but the more important thing about the Good Sam law is that it protects the individual who's overdosing and the individual who's calling 911. Now there's a small list of charges that they are protected from, possession of controlled substance being one of them. But oftentimes what we were seeing prior to this law being passed is people were afraid to call 911 because they didn't want to get in trouble. So we were hearing stories of people just sort of being tossed out of a moving vehicle at the door of an emergency room and hoping that somebody saw them. And so this law protects those individuals from being prosecuted so that somebody has a better chance of survival. And then the one that is most relevant for everybody in this room is the third-party access to naloxone, which allows for any Missouri resident, man, woman, child, any age, to legally carry and possess naloxone. That's it. You can have it, I can have it, your kid can have it, it's fine. And there is no risk to a person if they administer naloxone and it's not an overdose. It's not going to hurt anybody if it's something else. So this is just a super quick plug for the National 988 hotline, which was started in July. I'll be honest, everything on the screen is about everything I know about it. It is a crisis line for mental health and substance use, as well as suicide. And basically the intention behind 988 is rather than calling 911 for physical health emergencies, heart attack, stroke, car accident, things like that, 988 can be used as a behavioral health emergency line so that dispatch knows who to send. Law enforcement is not always the most appropriate person to send on the scene. Maybe we need to send EMS. Maybe we need to send a community behavioral health liaison or a clinical co-responder to help de-escalate a mental health situation, right? So making sure that we get the right professional for the right need. All of the calls get routed to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, which then get routed to the individual state. So this is very tiny, but this is what Missouri is doing, this whole little. I have it bigger at my laptop if you guys want to get email it out. But this was put together by the Missouri Department of Mental Health, kind of outlining the state of Missouri's plan for the 988 hotline. But again, the intention is just to connect people with behavioral health professionals rather than law enforcement or medical professionals, depending on what that person needs. So I feel like I really just did like an information dump at you. What questions can I answer? Not a thing. Okay, yeah.
I've heard about the 988 hotline, and your slide said it's national. How does that work? I mean, am I going to get someone from Colorado when I call, or will it be routed through our local?
So that's a great question. So if you guys couldn't hear, she said that because 988 is national, how do we ensure that we're being connected to somebody in Missouri? So every state operates kind of suicide hotlines, and so like a national suicide prevention hotline exists in Missouri. So when you call 988, it'll ping where you are. And it'll say, okay, this person is calling from Missouri. We're going to route them to a Missouri dispatch center. So you'll get somebody here.
No, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
There's early on in this, where you talked about the help for somebody that doesn't have insurance in the state of Missouri.
Yes.
And that's the biggest issue we have is especially here, there's a lot of good help here if you have insurance. We have a lot of people here that have no insurance. So that number you provided is who we call, we can help them save.
Yeah, so I have over on the table back there, I have a resource brochure of all of the treatment providers in the state of Missouri that receive SOAR funding and can take an individual who is opioid dependent and does not have insurance. It is also important to note that a lot of these providers offer telehealth services. So, you know, like there are a lot of places in St. Louis, and that's not necessarily accessible for somebody out here. But if we can get them connected to a telehealth provider and then get medication filled at a CVS or a Walgreens here. Yeah.
It's a big issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
You had mentioned earlier about new funding stream
Is that right?
Rural communities for first responders, right?
Correct.
Educating them on recovery. What is the spectrum there? What?
Yeah, so the training that we're going to be offering is really it's an anti-stigma training. And I want to talk to Brandon later because I might need to borrow his expertise. Really, what we have found, without going too deep into it, there's been a lot of research that shows that the primary reason that people who are actively using drugs decline hospital transport by EMS is perceived stigma from first responders. And so what we really hope to be able to do is connect with first responders in rural communities and say, like, what do you know about people who use drugs? What do you know about recovery and what that looks like? And are those beliefs accurate? And you know, let's connect you to people who are in recovery and who have those experiences and can tell you, maybe you're wrong about some things, or maybe you're right on the money. And then really helping those first responders integrate a little bit more intentionally into some of the work that's being done in communities, because we know that first responders are going to be a part of overdose response. You know, they just are, and so making sure that we are helping them connect in ways that are most impactful for the community, but are also not creating a bunch of additional work for them that is maybe outside the scope of what law enforcement, fire, and EMS would traditionally do.
And what is, will you be serving the state with that, or is it the specific communities that you'll be offering them to, or how do I get my community on the list?
Talk to me, everybody. Yeah, so the way we wrote it was that we said 20, quote, target communities, but we are open to serving the entire state. And because there are 115 counties in the state of Missouri, and there's need in all of them. And so to the extent that we can serve as many of those communities as possible, that's what we want to do. So if you know where you live, there is a need. If you know where you live, there's a need for Narcan and Narcan training. Talk to me later, I got you. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Other questions? If you think of something later, here's my contact information. If you need naloxone and you are a first responder, so law enforcement, fire, EMS, or public health departments, email firstresponders@mimh.edu. If you are not law enforcement, fire, EMS, or a health department, but you still need naloxone, email nomodoes@mimh.edu. And I can give you that information again later if you want. And then final shameless plug, check us out on social media. I mean, we have Twitter, why not? Okay, that's it.
discuss the stigma associated with addiction, and discuss the signs and symptoms of withdrawal and a withdrawal timeline, and discuss the role of medications and support recovery. This is going to take the full 30 minutes, and I apologize. Okay, what is substance use disorder? It's another term that we use for addiction. So substance use disorder is a more friendly term, and it is more descriptive of a disease term. So when we want to look at addiction as a disease. So when we say the word addiction, sometimes that leads to negativity or negative thoughts by people. Substance use disorder sounds more like a disease name, and it's associated with less stigma. So addiction is a lifelong disease that affects a person's brain and behavior, and it's the inability to control the use of a substance despite harm. So that's very important that the substance does cause harm, okay? The signs and symptoms of addiction is the failing to use the substance regularly, urges for the drug, needing more of the drug to get the same effect, taking more than intended, spending money when you can't afford it. The use affects daily life. You spend more time trying to get the drug because it kind of takes over the person. That kind of, is what drives them. And failing at attempts to stop the drug, and then having withdrawal symptoms when the drug is stopped. When I use the term medication-assisted treatment, that is the use of FDA-approved medications in combination with counseling and support. So it helps the patient to sustain recovery, it helps relieve withdrawal symptoms and cravings, and it helps to prevent relapse. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. It is not a cure. I'm going to come back to that. It does reduce the need for inpatient detox programs because a lot of the treatments can be gotten at the provider's office and you don't have to go into a month-long treatment program anymore. So let's go back to it's not a cure. So if you think about a disease we're all familiar with, like diabetes. When you have diabetes, we give you medicine, we give you lifestyle changes, we give you diet recommendations, and different ways to help control the disease, right? But we can never cure diabetes, right? Everybody agree with that? When we talk about addiction, we want to give them medications, we want to give them counseling and support, and it's not to cure the disease, but it's to control the disease and help them have a successful recovery. And we'll talk a lot about why that's important. So just to talk a little bit about stigma, again, I'm not going to read that definition, but pretty much stigma is a negative thought towards something, and maybe passing judgment. In the addiction community, we really want to move away from stigma and get people to be more accepting that addiction is a disease. And I have some ways listed to do that, but first I want to discuss that, give you an example of stigma. And it is a personal story of mine that I did not have last time I gave this presentation. And I hope I don't cry. I'm going to cry. So my son went to a party, and he decided that he was going to drink with his friend. And he had too much to drink. And when he got home, the person that brought him home, I was there, his dad was there, and his sister. And we all, when we saw him, pretty much unconscious, we knew something wasn't right. That this wasn't like the other times, okay? So we took him to a hospital, and we were obviously concerned because we took him to the hospital. We knew it wasn't right. And the doctor kind of was like, well, but he's just a young kid, and he's just drunk, and he just needs to sleep it off. Someone's just going to have to stay up with him and watch him, and why are you so concerned? Okay. The night progressed, and his breathing dropped to 0 in the ER, about 10 times, and was less than 5, probably 20 times. And the only way we could get him to breathe was to give him a vigorous sternal rub to wake his body up enough that he would take a breath. Thank God he didn't progress to worse, and he did respond to those sternal rubs, and it didn't, he's still with us today. But, it was a very scary time. We were concerned, and we still had that stigma. So I had never personally experienced stigma before, and I understand why it happens. They see drunk people all the time, I'm sure. But we knew it was more than just sleeping it off that night. Some ways we can reduce stigma, besides living it ourselves, is knowing the history of opioids. So a couple of things that I've seen that help me understand opioid epidemic that we have today. There's a series on Hulu called Dope Sick. It talks about the OxyContin movement, how opioid marketing and advertising led to the epidemic we're in, and it's a very good story. And you can actually see the drug abuse and death trends trend up when OxyContin came on the market in 2000. And it's a very interesting time for me because that's when I became a pharmacist. So I was living the opioid epidemic at that time. It was a pretty eye-awakening thing to see. Another thing is Dreamland, and that's a book, and it's a similar story, but it's just a book instead of a series. Also, just knowing the patient's history will help lead you away from stigma. So many times I've heard stories, we think addiction, and like Mary said, it goes to negative thoughts, or that they made bad choices, or that they're a bad person. Okay? I've seen so many stories, and heard stories, and seen stories of patients that say, I got addicted because I had surgery, and the doctor gave me a pain pill to treat my pain. And it led me down a road of destruction. And it was as simple as using a medication to treat pain, which was totally the right thing to do, but it led that person down that cycle and started that cycle for them. I heard another story about a recovering addict that I believe he broke his arm or a bone in his body, and he said he went into the ER and he told them, I'm a recovering addict. I don't want opioids. The nurse came in, gave him the medicine, didn't tell him what it was. It was morphine. So morphine's an opioid. It sent him down the cycle again of addiction, and he had to go through recovery again. So it's not always a bad choice. It can happen to anybody. Another way to reduce stigma is just knowing about the addiction process, which is what we're going to kind of focus on today. So, the science. So drug use affects many chemicals in the brain. The most important one it affects is dopamine. So dopamine is a very important chemical in the brain's reward center. It causes us to have pleasure, or to feel pleasure. It's released when we experience a pleasurable activity, and it contributes to the need to repeat that activity, and that's called the reinforcing effect, and we'll talk about that. The larger the dopamine surge that you get from something, the larger the need to repeat that activity. So that red line up there is we all have normal levels of dopamine circulating in our body so that we can feel pleasure, and that's what it's there for. When we do things that should cause pleasure, we get these increases in dopamine. So when we eat a great meal, we get a little spike in dopamine, and we're like, that meal was so good, I can't wait to have it again, right? When we have sex or use alcohol and nicotine, we get a dopamine surge, and that causes us to feel good, and it causes us to want to continue the cigarette or the beer or whatever. Then we start moving into the more stronger substances like cocaine, prescription opioids like hydrocodone and oxycodone and fentanyl, heroin, you can see how high that dopamine surge is, and methamphetamine. So if you think about when I say how important dopamine is in pleasure, and you get this large surge, that person feeling a big high, plus they're experiencing that reinforcing effect to want to continue to use again. So when I talk about how drugs affect the brain, it can be in three main areas. So the way our cells communicate are much like we communicate. I'm going to give a message, I'm the transmitter, and say go get my coat. And the receptor hears the message, so it's someone hearing my message, and then they act on that, and they go get my coat, right? Our cells, this is a chemical picture, but it's the same concept. This is our brain synapse. That's how our cells communicate. So the top, let me use my shaky pointer here. Okay, this is the transmitter part. It sends the chemical, which is dopamine, over to the receptor. It connects and it causes an effect, which would be feel good. You're going to feel good, and you're going to get the urge to, continue that activity and want to do it again. To keep this pathway very clean, bad pathway, good pathway. To keep this clean, we have any extra dopamine that we have gets recycled by the cell. So that keeps us from having excess dopamine available and extra stimulation going on. This over here is like a drug would affect this area of the transmission, the receptor, or the reuptake, and it causes us to have extra dopamine. So this would be if we're using a substance and we have extra dopamine in our body, it messes up with that pathway. That's what having that extra dopamine causes overstimulation and is causing the high and the need to repeat the activity. And this is just another picture of normally these dark, pointer. The dark circles there, which would be that one and that one, is we normally have opioids in our body to respond to pain. But and so you can see if we only have 2 of those floating around, that the chance of it attaching to the receptor are not very good because there's not very much of it, right? When it attaches to the receptor, we get that feel-good effect and that action, and then a reinforcing effect. As we introduce more opioids, like through prescription medicine or heroin or fentanyl, we increase the amount available. It's going to attach to the receptor, and it's going to cause the overstimulation because there's so much of it. Does that make sense? Nod your head, sort of? Okay. And then just to talk just a little bit about alcohol, just so that you know the treatment is different, and this is why. So besides dopamine, alcohol affects GABA and glutamate in our brain. And those are 2 chemicals that keeps our brain level of excitement balanced. So GABA calms us down, and glutamate kind of speeds us up and gives us excitement. Alcohol acts like GABA, and then it blocks the glutamate. So because of that, it's very depressing. This is what my son looked like that night. It overwhelms the system, and it really calms the body and depresses the body down. So when he wasn't breathing, his system was so overwhelmed with the depressant effect that it didn't want to perform what it needed to do, which was breathe without stimulation. Okay, so when we keep overstimulating our brain with dopamine by using substances, the brain goes, okay, this is not normal, I need to slow down. Like, I need this to stop. I don't like all this dopamine. I don't want it. I want that nice, clean pathway. So when the brain gets overwhelmed, it adapts, and it changes those chemicals, and it changes the neurotransmitters. And this change in the brain leads to the person having a reduced feeling of pleasure for normal activities, a lack of motivation, a flat mood, depression. They then are taking the substance to feel normal, and they need more of the substance to feel that same reward. So to show this is the best slide, I think, of this whole presentation. This dotted line here is a non-addict's dopamine threshold. So we all have this amount that we need to get to feel pleasure. So when we go a family vacation, get a promotion at work, see a baby be born, and it's so exciting to us, we've reached our threshold and we are feeling pleasure. When you're addicted to drugs or using substances, they're getting this large dopamine surge, okay, because we saw all the dopamine floating around, so the brain starts changing and it resets that threshold. So now the person needs to reach this line to feel pleasure, okay? So they're using the substance, they have all kinds of dopamine, and that's what they need to reach their new pleasure threshold. Does that make sense? Sort of? But if you look at this is so important. Things that normally caused pleasure before, they're not reaching their threshold now. So they're not going to be pleasurable to them anymore because their brain has reset. So when you're with a recovering addict and you want them to be excited about being clean for 3 weeks, because we're excited that they're clean for 3 weeks, their threshold is not the same as ours. Do you understand how important that is? So their brain has changed. They don't feel that same reward that we do as normal people. So when we're asking them to work on relationships or to build friendships or to be excited to go to work and get a paycheck, it's not going to work the same. This is where treatment becomes super important. This slide's in here just to show the ups and downs of substance use. So you start using, and this can be prescription pain meds, this is heroin, just whatever, to illustrate. This up here is the feel-good zone. This down here is the feel-bad zone, okay? So they're going to use the substance, they feel good, they go back to normal. Feel good, go back to normal. They continue to use. All of a sudden, if you can see it shift, they're using to feel normal, and when they don't use, they feel sick. So this is that point that their brain has changed, and now they're just using to feel normal and to not be sick, which is why we call dope sick, hence the series on Hulu. Okay. All right, so let me go back. So when we say medication-assisted treatment, and that, we want to keep them near this normal zone as much as we can and prevent the ups and downs. We'll come back to that. So this is a very important slide too. So the person starts, this is a healthy person, and that red in there is dopamine. Now I'm not trained to read these things, but I do know the red is the pleasure center of dopamine. This is someone has used drugs for quite some time, and they've been off drugs for a month. How much dopamine is there? Zilch. Then, about 14 months after using, look what happened. Their brain is recuperating, and that pleasure center is coming back. I'm not saying they don't have other brain damage. I'm not saying that. I don't know how to read that, but their dopamine center is coming back. So, the important thing here, if we can give them medicines, support, therapy to sustain recovery, then we give their brain time to heal. We give them time for their pleasure center to come back and be excited about living life again, right? You see my pattern here? And then they want to succeed, they want to build those relationships, and all that starts happening, okay? But it takes time to heal. Okay, so symptoms of withdrawal. Pretty much, I'm not going to read every one, but you feel like you have the worst flu. I've heard it described as the flu times 100, and they really feel sick, okay? So when we feel sick, any of us, what do? We take medicine to feel better, right? What's their medicine going to be? They're going to want to reuse. So it's important to control the withdrawal symptoms when they start. More about that. So this is the withdrawal timeline. I really like this slide. So they stopped the drug. Within 72 hours, they're feeling really crappy. They have all those symptoms we just looked at. Within a week, they're still feeling but they're getting better as far as those physical symptoms, go. Within 2 weeks to a month, look what happens is kind of switching to an emotional depression, anxiety type of symptoms. This is when they'll start craving the drug to cope, to cope with stress or life stressors. So we talk about medication-assisted treatment and giving the brain time to heal, to get better. Medication-assisted treatment is important here to control those withdrawal symptoms so they don't feel sick. And then it's important down here to control cravings and help them get the counseling they need to learn to handle stress and coping, okay? You've already seen part of this slide, but this is again just to show you the ups and downs of drug addiction, which we talked about. They go in withdrawal. They have this life stressor because they need to learn to cope again. And boom, they start using again. And this right here is a big time for death because they haven't used and then they start reusing, and that's very significant time right there. So again, we want to introduce medication-assisted treatment to get rid of these peaks and valleys and to keep them at that normal zone so that they can go through the withdrawal and then they can learn to cope again. Does that make sense? and this is the drawing that I made. I'm not very good at making things, but there's a normal zone, so we want to give them a treatment so they don't feel high and they don't feel sick. So that's the whole point. So the goals of medication-assisted treatment is to help control withdrawal symptoms, help prevent cravings, help to sustain that recovery. The patient can learn to cope again. It allows the brain to heal, and we want to prevent that death from relapsing. It's not a cure. We kind of already talked about the whole diabetes thing, so we're not going to cure it, but we want to control the addiction. I know I'm missing like 50 points that I wanted to say, but whatever. I can't use 3 hands. Okay, so this is just some of our treatment options. For alcohol, we have these 3, which we won't really talk about. For opioids, we have, Suboxone is a big one. When we talk about other substances, so methamphetamine, cocaine, we don't really have a one-size-fits-all treatment for that. That kind of sucks. But hopefully they'll come up with something. So when we're dealing with cocaine and meth, we kind of just have to treat the symptoms and then get them through the withdrawal period and then get them the support that they need to learn to cope again. And then plus we would want to add antidepressants and psych meds and counseling and support and all that to give them the support that they need. And you heard Brandon say how important support is. So just a few facts and myths. A myth: we are using one addiction to treat another. How do you guys, yes or no? How do you feel about that? It's sort of is true, because the drugs we use can be addictive as well, but they prevent those ups and downs. So we are substituting one medicine for another, but hopefully you've learned why that's important. We want to keep them at that normal zone and prevent the peaks and valleys. So a myth: relapse is failure. How do you feel about that? No? So if you have a diabetic, they eat a couple slices of cake and have a Coke at a birthday party and end up in the emergency room with a sugar of 700, right? And they're very sick. We're not going to kick them to the curb and say, oh, sorry, you suck. We're going to say, let's adjust your medicines. Let's educate you about your lifestyle changes and what went wrong and what we can do better. When an addict relapses, it's the same concept. We're not going to kick them to the curb and say, you suck. We're going to say, how can we adjust your medicine? How can we support you better? What can we do? Right? So it's not failure. It's an opportunity to control the disease better. And then a fact is medications are only part of the effort to increase the success of recovery. And hopefully you've learned from Brandon and me that support, emotional, family, hopefully, like he said, he had good people around him that didn't give up and kept fighting. My son that night had the right people in the right places, that it ended up as a good ending and not a bad ending, right? And that's it. And I know I left out a bunch of stuff. But any questions for me? Yes.
When a doctor prescribes that,
Suboxone.
now, so for the addict, that's a lifelong. What you're saying is it's pretty much they're going to take that the rest of their life.
Not necessarily.
But it could.
It really depends on when they started using, how much they used, how young they were, and how long they've used, and all. It's a big picture. But I think that slide with the 3 pictures kind of shows that potentially they can be tapered off of it once they learn those coping skills and they get their life back. You know what I mean? Because the drugs control their life, and we want to give them their life back without relying on the illegal substance.
So that's a prescribed drug that the doctor prescribes, so insurance covers it and everything.
In the best world, yes, insurance covers it.
That's right.
Sometimes people don't have insurance, and there are other alternatives. You don't have to use Suboxone. There's a drug called Subutex, but the problem is you can crush that and inject it. So we like to use the films, but the Subutex would be a little cheaper. And it's just working with a provider, working with your pharmacy group, support groups that we have, here. And yes, we do see that sometimes that we can't get the drug covered, and that's an unfortunate reality that we face. We do, I'm sure the hospital offers resources and yeah. Yeah, Australia could send the slides to whomever or everybody or whatever. I have changed it a couple of times. It depends what group I'm talking to. But yeah. Who else had a question?
I just wanted to respond to what you said. I was talking earlier about the SMR providers. If y'all haven't picked up some of these lists and see it, you know the individual who is uninsured, but would like to be on spots where they're not able to access those resources. The SOAR grant covers the cost of those.
Yay. Anything else? Yeah.
Talking mostly about the medical aspect of pharmaceutical fees, but when you talk about the high and how they use the harder, I assume the low is now lower, so we might get upset. This person is very upset and it's low. And when they come to you or when they go to the hospital, I don't know, is there any effort to give that information to their family? So they now know they can't say, cut it out.
Yes, that's why I'm doing it. Like, I'm very passionate, and to be honest with you, when I did retail work in my first 7 years as a pharmacist, I had much stigma because all I saw was people, I was a young pharmacist, it was the OxyContin movement, that everybody got Oxy or whatever, and it was very frustrating to see people that you knew were going down this cycle and you couldn't do anything about it. Seeing people coming to get Sudafed and syringes over and over again, and you knew it wasn't for colds and diabetes. So I had stigma bad, probably. It was very frustrating. But now I see the other side of it. I've educated myself, and I've seen people trying to get better and the hardships of not being able to afford the drug or get treatment. And it changes me. I mean, if I can be free of stigma, anybody can. But just doing the job as a pharmacist or a physician, or a nurse, like, oh gosh, here they come again, wanting their refills, but we learned that it kind of takes over the person's life, that that's what they become focused on. And so this is just a way to help. But yes, I would love to talk this speech to everybody, but I can't, So hopefully the committee can help with that.
That is the purpose of this as well. I mean, we're going to continue doing this for years and hopefully it's not. We have a grant to cover our activities for 2 years right now. And should we come in contact with other grant funds or Canada as possible?
Yeah, I heard that I've been reading that the commissioners, that they're getting ready to settle this big opioid. And I heard our commissioner say that, Mayor Nelson say this will go to help the problem, not just we're going to get a big influx of money here, or whatever the money is. It's going to be used to help the problem here in our city, in our county. So,
understanding the problem.
Yeah.
Our committee is committed to making the best use of those resources. We are in contact with our commission, and we are working to really take all of this today, your feedback, your questions, your comments, your concerns, and take that and apply that to what we do as we move forward.
Well, I watched this going on for years now, and seeing the hospital involved, get on board with it, and realizing, hey, we have a problem. We have doctors don't do this right, and they've addressed it. And I'm encouraged with that, and all the people from the hospital here that support this.
And if you want to know about what the hospital's done, we'll talk.
Everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Johnny Bryan, and I'm with Prevention and Healthcare Missouri. We my navigation wanted me to go through St. Louis, and I was like, no. So I came down through Farmington, and that's definitely the way I want to go back home. Maybe hit some antique malls. I did not tell Justin what time I would be home. That was on purpose. So, to give you guys a little bit of history about myself, since you do not know me and I do not know you, I'm a previous juvenile officer out of Cole County, which is Jefferson City. I was in that role for about 5 years, and it broke my whole heart. I'm going to try, like many others, not to cry today, but I am a crier, so trying not to. That role will stay with me forever. And it taught me a lot of lessons. It taught my daughter a lot of lessons. There was a few times where she was like, Mom, do not use it. I'm like, if you're going to go spend the night at somebody's house, Mom is going to. It's been like an FBI agent with very severe skills. So, I do maybe not encourage you to case net where your kids are going to spend the night, but definitely know their history and where your kids are going, of course. So, I've been with Prevention Consultants. I just had my year mark there. I've been working on the Overdose Data to Action grant. I don't know if you guys have that same grant funding any progress here in your counties, but it is an awesome grant. I work a lot with Too Good for Drugs, Mental Health First Aid, and then also Generation RX. And one that I didn't put on there today was also Prevention Plus Wellness, which is another great program. I chose to come to this, I'm going to call it this side of the tracks, because it's two, both sides are going towards the same place, but very different avenues of how to get there. So I'm very, very happy to be in the prevention world, and starting from a place of hopefully we can prevent kids from making some of those bad decisions or risky decisions, and also educating parents and staff and schools and workplaces of what you can do as an adult to make some of those changes as well, and prevent that from even being a possibility for a youth. Let's see. I didn't know if I would have like a podium, but it's my paper. So the first up is Too Good for Drugs. I had so much fun teaching this program. I didn't miss being with the youth. That was one thing I really enjoyed about being a juvenile officer, is I got to meet so many youth. When I left the juvenile office, I had over 72 kiddos on my caseload, and to hand that over to someone else when I left literally just had me in pieces, because I just ensured and tried to ensure all of the safety for those kids for several years. And so I was very, very happy to jump into teaching Too Good for Drugs, because it's very skills-oriented, it's very hands-on. It is a comprehensive family of evidence-based substance use and violence prevention interventions designed to mitigate the risk factors linked to problem behaviors, and then also build protection within. So hopefully that child will know how to resist those problematic behaviors. So Too Good also develops and reinforces comprehensive skills, that framework including setting reachable goals, making responsible decisions, making or identifying and managing emotions, and then also those effective communication skills, in addition to peer pressure refusal building. How do you refuse someone? How do you tell someone no? I'm 37 and I struggle with saying no, which is silly. I should know how to do that. Our kids really don't, especially when their friends are making it seem cool or fun, or the older brother or sister or their parents or family do those things. So those stats down there at the bottom are from just 3 counties that we have taught in. There was a decrease in alcohol use of 1.4%, cigarettes and chew of 4.1 decrease, which is huge. E-cigarettes, 1.7 decrease, and then most importantly, perception and availability. Do kids think that they can get these things easily or not? Alcohol was down 5.1, tobacco was down 5.6, e-cigs down 2.5, and marijuana down 1.2. So Would we like all of those to be like 100%? Yes, but we all know kids can get their hands on things. And the perception, typically with children, when I'm teaching the Too Good for Drugs, was if one person did it, they all did it. And to tell kids, no, only 12% of teens have used, or 8% of teens have done this or this or this. They were floored by that, but they were also hopefully empowered, because to hear that 92% of kids don't is huge. And so instead of focusing on the 80% that do, we need to congratulate that percentage that does not, and keep harping on the most kids don't, most kids don't. I know you know 3 kids that do, but that is not all kids. But in the mind of a 8-year-old or 12-year-old, you know, all they see is right now. So that's what they think when that's all they see. Thank you for my paper for advancing my slide. So effective prevention programs like Too Good promote skills development and educate youth about the effects and consequences of risky behaviors like engaging in substance use and violence. Because the delivery of information alone rarely, I have that here, sorry, it's my own, that rarely changes the behaviors, and because of other informative or emotional appeal strategies like lectures, scare tactics, alarming statistics, or infrequent or single event presentations have proven to be ineffective with reducing or deterring risky behaviors in children and youth. By the end of the 10 days that I'm with those kids, I know their first names, I know what type of dog they have, or if they like red or yellow. You know, you get to know. I know it's 10 days, but the point is to build that rapport with those relationships, so one, they want to listen to you do. And it really helps them then get into what Too Good encompasses. Too Good programs are based in a sound development and prevention theory. They use a strengths-based approach that builds on the strengths, and then also it incorporates the wellness as a part of a strategy to address risk, aiming to build protective factors. So those Too Good programs, for instance, they have a lot of skits. The kids get to interact. You have all these. It comes in this awesome box and it has everything in there you need to do for the next 10 weeks. And of course, I go and put lesson 1, 2, 3 in folders or whatever. Tap into the inner teacher that I never was. And the kids absolutely enjoy it. At first, they're like, great, somebody else is going to talk about no drugs, no. But when they realize you're bringing games to the table, and they get to speak and get up in front, they absolutely have a blast with that. And one of my favorite ones is, it's called the Nice Hair Skit. And I bring up 3 kids, and they have to say, nice hair, 3 separate ways. There's a nice hair, and there's a nice hair, or there's nice hair. You know, so when you teach kids the different levels of that and how that tone comes across, their words really do mean something. It really helps build those communication boundaries that are not broken down very often lately because of all the texting and the iPads, and I know all that stuff has a purpose, and it does help, but we've got to continue to teach our kids to communicate so they can express themselves, so they're not turning to the negative things to learn how to express themselves. So the next up that I wanted to talk to you guys about is mental health first aid. As a previous juvenile officer, this is an awesome program. I don't know if has anybody taken this in here? Awesome. I'm very, very happy to see that. I know that there are there's some funding available for this to be implemented in a lot of the schools. Recently, I went and taught this at 3 different schools, and I was very, very happy to see that we not only had teachers in there, we had bus drivers in there, we had janitorial staff in there, and you know, that bus driver is who picks my kid up in the morning and who drops them off at night. They're one of the first people to notice, or hopefully notices, if my kids had a bad day or in a bad mood, woke up late, and I shoved them out the door with no ponytail in their hair. So those are the people that sometimes have the best glimpse as to some of our children's mental health and their well-being. So 10.2% of youth will be diagnosed with a substance use disorder in their lifetime. That's quite a bit. 1 in 5 teens and young adults lives with a mental health condition, and then 50% of mental illnesses by age 14, and 75, or begin by age 14, and then 75% by the mid-20s. My daughter's 17. I probably wanted to start locking her in her room about age 9. So but there are parents that are not aware of those things, sometimes because they don't want to be, but also because lack of education, or they're just going to say, well, they're just being a normal kiddo. And sometimes that is not the case. So who should know mental health first aid? Teachers, school staff, coaches, camp counselors, again, like the bus drivers, are the people that are doing the transport for the kiddos. Prevention programs help those that are particularly at risk prevent. With prevention programs, those examples can include parenting skills training, substance use education, resilience training, programs in schools, promotion of physical activity and exercise to improve mood. That's one of the key factors of the PPW, the Prevention Plus Wellness. It really incorporates to help kiddos understand why they need to get up and move around. But also helps them recognize just going out to grab the mail is physical activity. My Apple Watch counts it, and so do I. You know, I want those steps every day. And we need to help our kiddos recognize some of that physical activity too. And then, you know, like in our previous presentation, they were discussing how exercise can help with that. Same for the kiddos. We need to help our kiddos naturally stimulate that dopamine and some of those feel-good effects so they have a better image of themselves and feel better. So promotion of those physical activity, exercise, you know, to improve mood. Also stress management courses are hugely helpful for kiddos too. I remember when I started my undergrad, I was like, what do I need a stress management? Oh, I needed that. I needed that. And I didn't know it. I didn't understand what self-care was at 22 with a 2-year-old. I had no idea what that looked like. And that taught me a lot, and it helped me understand how beneficial that was. And so I was able to, you know, as Jaden was growing up, also try to teach her those things and help her understand, like, if you are going to be sassy, you're welcome to go have your own time out in your room. You don't have to be sassy to me. Go be sassy to your stuffed animal, please. You know, and that is kind of a form of self-care too, just going and taking a break for a few minutes. The third program, I have taken this program and ran it in so many directions. Janie's, my boss's head is probably spinning. So Generation RX teaches a lot of medication safety, how to be safe, what to do with medication. And we are a medication-taking society. That's why we're here. Consuming billions of medications in the United States alone each year. Prescription and over-the-counter medications are typically accessible and visible in our homes. And children should always understand prescription and over-the-counter medication safety at an early age. If you want to raise your hand, please do. If you don't, it's okay. But how many of us have medicine, whether it be a prescription or ibuprofen or Tums of some sort, in our handbags or in our cars? Most all of us, right? So that could be, if I need to run into the store really quick and I leave my daughter, you know, at age 17 in the car with her friend, and my purse is in there, and her friend is maybe questionable, do you think she's not going to know how to be super slick and sneaky to get whatever's out of my purse before my daughter even sees her? Right. We have to really think about those things, unfortunately, in today's society. 54% of individuals that misuse primary verbs say that they got them from a family or a friend without them knowing it. That's a huge statistic. Story time, again, my mom is a nurse. She's retired now. But she is, I always say she still is a nurse because I think it hurts her feelings because she was in nurse school. But she'll say, I still know what to do. So, yeah, that's her voice, trust me. When I was 2.5, my mom was a single mom of 3 of us, and she was home trying to make dinner. She takes heart medication to slow her heart rate down. And she always had to take her medication with dinner. So it was logical for her. She put it on the counter. Over here making dinner, right? Us three girls are doing who knows what, screaming, yelling, fighting, whatever. I'm sure she wanted to bump us all on the head. So I, at 2.5, reach up there and I grab her pill bottle. I get it open and I take it off. Don't know why I did that because we know it tastes good, but I did it. So had to be life flighted down to Little Rock. I barely made it. I'm very lucky to be here. I do have heart problems also as a result of that. I just have to keep it in check and keep an eye on it. But my point in sharing that with you is my mom was a licensed nurse, single mom, trying to raise her kids, trying to make dinner. She knew she had to have her medicine with dinner, and that was what her eye was on. No matter our professions, where we're at, anybody can make those mistakes. And while my mom probably thought she was being very safe just having that medication on the counter, it was definitely within my reach. So Generation RX is personal to me, even though it really shouldn't be, but it is because so many individuals do need that little tidbit of education. You know, new mom, don't leave the medication on the bedside table because your 4-year-old might wake up and think that they're coughing and they think, oh, mom has a cough syrup. They have no idea what they're doing. Don't leave it in the bathroom either. Don't leave it in your purse. Don't, preface it with it tastes like grape juice, because Dimetapp definitely did. And that's, we can't teach them to want candy and then expect them to not compare those two things. All right, so we're going to play a little game. You guys are excited. You guys can raise your hands or not play, whatever you want to do. But it's Candy First Medicine, and it's one of the Generation RX games. It's actually for elementary, but I love using this with adults. Yes, Justin, I made him play this game last night, and he epically failed, and he knew I was going to share that with you today. So, first up, if you think the first square is candy, raise your hand. If you think the second square is candy, raise your hand. Sorry. Okay, are we ready? Yeah. Too many Tums is going to give you a bellyache, even though it's supposed to prevent them, and too many Altoids may as well. But Tums should also be considered a medicine, even though, again, that's an over-the-counter thing. All right, this first one, raise your hand if that's medicine. Medicine? Next one, medicine. Okay. Justin told me he was never going to look at Smarties the same. And he's glad they don't all come in the same color. Okay, so that is just a little taste of some of that programming from Generation RX. And there's one with Skittles. I didn't put it in here, but maybe I should have, because that one was hard for me to notice the red Skittles versus ibuprofen. And to us, we might is this a Skittle? Skittle's going to squish and ibuprofen isn't. But a 5-year-old or a 2.5-year-old is just going to grab that and think they have got something worth $1 million in their hand and eat it as fast as possible and not say a word because they know they're not supposed to be eating candy. So this is a graphic that I made recently and I shared with our social media and with a couple of our counties. And this is something that I based off the Generation RX message. They have 4 key points, and that's the safe use, so only using your prescription as prescribed. Never share your medications with others or use someone else's. Always store your medications securely and properly dispose of medications that you no longer need. I know, I've had a doctor tell me, all right, so after 5 of these antibiotic pills, you feel better, you think you're clear, you don't have to take any more, just put the rest in your cabinet. That's not okay for my physician to say to me. But they do. So I definitely disposed of them. But the next one is being that good example. Talking to your kids, implementing those safe practices, discussing those dangers of misusing prescription drugs. My daughter came home one day, she had caffeine pills in her purse, and I was like, where did you get these? Oh, Walgreens in the aisle. I'm like, all right, smarty pants, cough them over because that's not cool. You're 17. Why are you taking caffeine pills? Well, everybody else does I'm like, all right, here we go. Sit down. Talking to your kids about the dangers of drugs can cut the risk for future use in half. That's another huge, huge statistic. And it's hard to talk to our kids. I mean, it's hard for me to talk to my daughter, and this is the world that I'm in. Also, she doesn't want to ever hear me talk. But she has to deal with that, right? She gets her ability to talk so much from somewhere. So I brought a couple of different flyers, and I put them in the back for you guys. One of them, this is a paper handout from that Generation RX program. They have the Generation RX from kindergarten through elderly. So you can literally present that to anyone. Their website is free, their materials are free. You just have to be able to print things if you need to print something. I love the Teen Educator one because it also gives them those peer refusal strategies that mimics the Too Good for Drugs program. Like you can make a joke. Nah, I'd rather sleep in my bed tonight instead of the cop in the police station. In Cole County, we had some of the worst rooms for kids to spend the night in, and they hated it. It was very cold, it was metal, it was not comfortable, and many of them would say orange was not my color. But that's what they had to do overnight if that's the situation they put themselves in. Another one is give a reason. No thanks, coach will kick me off the team if I take that. And we do have a lot of sports players, and in our communities, and we want those sports players to stay in good standing, and they feel that pressure from us. Billy's ankle was broke last week. He doesn't need any more pain pills. So-and-so's knee's hurting, so he might take half of one or what have you. They might share those things. We need to talk to our kids when they do get these prescriptions, make sure they understand we're not sharing these. It's dangerous. We don't know what other medications your friends are on. One, it's illegal. Two, we don't know what medications they're on, so on and so forth. So that's a great handout. It's back there for you guys to take with or look at. I also brought the one from the adult. It's called Take Action. And it plainly states medication safety starts with you. It starts with you. And I do fully believe that's our responsibility as adults with anyone in our life. Same thing going into my grandma's house with grandma. The cleaning lady was here today, and you have all your medications out here. Yes, I know we can trust Susie, but I don't know about her new health, right? We have to be careful and think about who has access to this stuff, not just that it's easy for grandma to take because it's close to her TV stand. The next thing I brought for you guys is a medication record. That's also from Generation RX. And it helps patients just record their medications, make a list, what they're using it for, who the doctor is. Another thing I gave to Grandma, because when I go over to Grandma's, I can look through her list and be like, okay, this one she should have in the afternoon. Grandma, did you take this today? It helps you with those family members. Or if you have a child, it helps you keep track of what they should and shouldn't be taking. Another item I brought you guys that I designed off that Generation RX model is a medication safety packet. And what I've been doing with these is taking these to physicians' offices, schools, children's division, pharmacies, and they can give these to those patients with those opioid medications. Or, I flat out told them, if someone wants it, please let them have it, even if they're not taking opioids or some type of major medication like that. But it also has, let's see if I can one-hand this. It also has that medication tracker in there. I put a Deterra bag in there. I put a handout for safe medication practices with 4 controlled substances. There's also behind that an opioid checklist. And then one of my favorite things is how to be your own health advocate. Tips on how they can be a better patient too and have better control of their health. It has suggestions on there, learn about your medications. Especially why your doctor wants to prescribe that for you. What is it going to do for you? Keep a complete medication record. If the cost of your prescription is an issue, be sure to talk to your healthcare provider or your pharmacist about how to reduce that. Just tips that I think sometimes with us being in this world, we know some of those, but those that are not in this world are not exposed to the prevention side of tracks. They don't have that information. So, thank you guys. Sorry. All right, thank you. We're going to take about 5 minutes while I get Dr. Potler up here to get his PowerPoint up. I would like to say that here in St. Genevieve County, we do work on prescription and medication safety, and one way that we do it is through our prescription drug take-backs that take back over-the-counter medications and also prescription medications. We host them in April and in October for those very reasons that she listed, that if you have them in your home, your children or family members have access to them. So do be aware of those, and please participate when those events happen. I know last time we collected 53 pounds of over-the-counter or prescription medication. That's an unbelievable amount of pills and other medicines to collect, and we do this twice a year. And each time we collect about that much. So we're just prescribed a lot of medicines, or we take a lot of medicines over the counter. So do be aware of that. Do know that that is one of our activities, and we do it intentionally for medication safety at home. We have 2 speakers left. Our next speaker is Dr. Steve Potler with the hospital. And I'll let him introduce himself. He has quite a bit to share, so we'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Serena. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm in a precarious position because I'm following people who are absolutely expert in their roles, and I'm speaking immediately after lunch, and I'm an administrator, not someone useful. So, I mean, I got a lot of stuff to jump over here, but I'll try and do what I can. I'm Steve Potler. I'm the CEO of St. Genevieve Memorial Hospital, and it's 2 years ago this month that I joined. I grew up in Chester, Illinois on a family farm, and I joked that it took me 40 years to cross the river. But I was useful once upon a time. I started out as mostly an ICU nurse in Barnes Hospital and places like that before I got into administration. I've worked in several states in administration, and have recently come back. I'm literally about 15 miles from the farm I grew up on right now. So it's good to be here, and it's great to see this community come together now. But I don't have a gamer, but I do have a little bit of quiz. So I'm seeing a lot of different types of people in the community. I do want to thank all the vendors who come here, the people who are displaying. So make sure you connect with those resources, because I know you're here to make connections and learn a little bit. So I hope that they'll be able to help illustrate some of the things that they have to offer today as well. But I know I see elected leaders, so thank you for coming out. I know you've got a huge dog in this fight of keeping people healthy. So we have other behavioral health people who work in behavioral health, a couple, other healthcare providers, okay, schools, that's good, ministry. I know we got some double dippers here. So when you look at it, there are people who have a lot of different interests and a lot of different talents here, and that's very encouraging in terms of our ability to move forward in the community. I'm here to mostly talk about inpatient management of substance withdrawal that we do at the hospital, to let you know a little bit about what we're doing here. I'm going to brag one more time on Laura, because if you didn't know, she was actually recognized by the governor for the work that she did for years in reducing the use of opioids among our physicians. We employ all the primary care physicians in the county, and so the fact that she looked at this and started looking at opioid use and looking at where we could reduce that safely and still get proper pain management, and then we're taking a next step and looking at co-prescribing benzodiazepines and opioids, because people who take both are at incredible risk. So, doc, I need something for pain. Doc, I need something to go to sleep because I can't get rest. And so looking at how those things are managed. So she's been doing that for years and making huge strides in that. So I really want to recognize that. The mission of our hospital is we put people first by providing excellent, personalized, and compassionate health care. And there's probably not a whole lot of people who need that more than people who are struggling with substance use, because they're caught, as they describe it, they're caught in a physical trap, they're caught in an emotional trap, they're caught in social traps, and it's hard to get out, and sometimes it's hard to seek help because the people that you seek for help are a little weary and a little guarded about when you come to seek help. So if we're going to be a leader of health and wellness, we started out as a hospital treating the sick. We're going towards health and wellness over time in the communities that we serve by being the provider of choice and the employer of choice, and that means we have challenges because we have people on our staff who've had substance use issues, and we treat them compassionately, we take care of them. Some folks, we need to do monitoring of them, but they're real people, they have real lives, and we need to take care of them as well. So I put our services into three major buckets. So I've got active care, best health, and restorative. So active care, the intervention-driven curative care, inpatient surgery, and emergency departments. Best health, things, the lifetime needs and lifestyle-driven, including clinic and wellness and genetics, those sorts of services. And then compassionate, the restorative care for recovery, palliative, and finding balance. That takes place of things like swing bed and therapies and home health and palliative. And I think when we talk about recovery, we cover each one of these phases one way or another. They're covered in each one of the things that we do the most. It's gonna look like a little bit of an eye chart, but I think Australia is gonna share these once we get done here. I gotta take this disc, but I'll email it to you. When you look at it, in 2016, over 17,000 deaths from prescribed opioids and 30,000 additional deaths from overdoses in the U.S. I spent a lot of time looking this up and spending time on it because at the hospital I worked at in Texas, we had a lot of people who were coming in with these issues. And my doctorate, I'm not the turn your head kind of doctor. I'm the tell me all about it kind of doctor, more or less. My doctorate is in biomedical ethics. So my thesis was on a use of narcotics for people with end-of-life pain and substance use disorder history. So when we look at this, if you've got stage 4 cancer, you've got pain. And you have to have painkillers or else you're not going to be able to sustain your life. What do you do when you have that kind of pain and substance use disorder, either in the patient or the caregiver that they're relying on? And so threading that needle is what I did my doctoral thesis on. So this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart, of how do we help these people and not hurt them by the way we treat them, either in terms of as a person or clinical decision making. So we do offer a medically assisted withdrawal program. We partner with New Vision, and Melissa's back there in a forest of little white bags. So we're glad to be working with them. Treatment begins when withdrawal symptoms begin, so you need to be in withdrawal to come as an inpatient, because otherwise we're not going to be able to give you medications to management. And Laura gave great examples of that. Many different substance use disorders are treated, so a lot of different substances we can treat and manage those symptoms. And it's on a referral or on for inpatient, outpatient, and peer support aftercare. So what we do is just that medical treatment. So it's a few days, and that's what we're doing at the hospital. So we do have some outpatient nurse we have an outpatient nurse practitioner, psychiatric nurse practitioner. We have the social worker who's been counseling at the hospital for more than 25 years in various roles. And they're on the outpatient clinic side, but a lot of these folks are going to need more than just that as well. They're going to need peer support. They're going to need other outpatient clinic support, and one of our physicians, Dr. Bosner, does, he does the Suboxone. Does he do the Sodefex as well?
We just prefer Suboxone.
Right. So we do have treatment options, medical treatment options in the clinic that the hospital operates as well. And some of the cautions include caregiver shortage and access to care. We're just like everybody else. We're having trouble finding people to work here, just like every other hospital in the U.S. And in St. Genevieve, we're still having a little trouble with, if I hire you, how far do you have to drive to get here? Because there's no place to buy. And I know that there are people working on that very hard, but it's still an issue. We actually have two new OBs that started. One, and they're both in the Rozier subdivision. One of the OBs is in the house that we had to buy. We were able to find it on the open market. We bought it just in case, and then the physician couldn't find anywhere else to live. And so we bought the house. She's living in the house, and so that's the level we're at there. Abandonment and stigma by physician or family. It can be frustrating to live with this person because of these highs and lows. You don't know what to do for them. You can't do things for them, and so you get frustrated. They're vulnerable from neuropsychiatric changes of addiction, and they're threatening autonomy. So they lack the ability to make good decisions because of the chemical imbalance, because of physical structural changes that happen in the brain. And so they make bad choices based on cues, craving, and withdrawal. A fear of adequate pain control. What if you do have real pain in addition to the addiction that you have? You still need pain control to be giving adequately good medicine. And then diversion of medication or misuse, and that's what Johnny was just talking about now. Someone coming in and taking it, or someone misusing it. And this is a quote that I really like. When all the resources of action seem to be exhausted, the most important aspect of human relations emerges, that of being, including being present, being close, and being welcoming. That's a challenge as caregivers because you have to be constantly putting yourself forward like that, knowing that the response may not be favorable. But that's a role that we have to take on as a healthcare provider. We have to be that presence, and we're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in our various areas. So my particular doctoral thesis talked about engage, and it talks about setting goals, restoring autonomy, building a team around the patient, and what environment they're in. So if they have a problem with alcohol and they have to walk past 3 liquor stores on their way home, they're at constant risk. They've got constant stimulus. All I need is another bottle of Jack. And I was thinking about an ethical case where we actually bribed someone for a short time into prescribing wild turkey as he transitioned onto the medication that the doctor was going to do, because he'd come in and left and come in and left and come in and left, and his liver was deteriorating, and the EMTs kept finding him in pools of his own stuff at home. And so the only way we kept that person in the last couple of days of life was giving him a little wild turkey until he transitioned into the other medication the doctor gave him. So when you talk about environment, and his ex-wife kept bringing him the bottles of wild turkey, he didn't have to leave. So it's keeping that dignity, restoring the ability to make your own decisions, building the right kind of supportive people around you is what I was trying to do in addition to the other clinical medicine, because a doctor may only have 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 minutes to deal with this person that has 20, 30, 40 years generational, 2, 3, 4 generations of dysfunction, and somehow we've got to fix it in an hour in the emergency room, we've got to fix it in 20 minutes in the physician's office, and it's just not possible. So we have to build up that environment around them to make that something that's livable for them. So this is just a little bit of background that you all know already. But we have limited access to substance use treatment hospitals locally. The beds have all generally been full lately, and the ones that are within an hour's drive. And that's a real challenge, because if you have to go somewhere else, just like if you have to go for other medical needs, if you have to go somewhere because of a trauma or a burn or a heart stent or something like that, somewhere else, it's a burden on the family, it's a burden on the patient. And then when they're trying to discharge you, they don't know what environment you're going home to. They don't know what resources you're going to have. And so the ability to treat people here locally is something that we consider to be pretty precious. And we talk about the experience of the illness of addiction or substance use disorders influenced by pain, financial distress, social disruption, family stress, and inability to participate or enjoy your vocation or recreation. You've got this web of things that keep people from getting into a state where they can participate normally in society. And some of it is when people have been hurt by this other person, they say, that's all well and good, but I'm not going to give you any more chances. I've given you money, I've let you stay in my house, I've let these other things happen. How do we get that person back so that they've got the rest of their lives to live? You can't discard these people. How do we help create an environment for these people so that they can avoid the cues, craving, and the withdrawal that bring them back in? That graph that Laura showed, when they hit that life stressor and everything, the bottom falls out. What do I have to lose? At least I felt good for a minute. And that's a very dangerous place to be and can be deadly. So in our hospital-based treatment model, we have an inpatient admission. The patients often stay about 3 days. We do pain and symptom management. We have specialty physician care, so Dr. Bosner is often the one who takes care of them. Our other inpatient physicians take care of them as well. And then Melissa arranges for outpatient follow-up with local resources as best she can. We do have cash pay and discounted care available for those inpatient stays for people who don't have insurance, but there are some people who either decide not to or don't want to or can't pay at least something towards their care, and we have to recover something that I have to have something to pay the nurses with. We are still a county-owned hospital. We don't have any other resources to draw from. We don't have a foundation to draw from. We don't have a corporate office in Denver or St. Louis or Pittsburgh or Nashville or somewhere else. If it happens here, it's because we're doing it here, and so we have to be careful stewards of our resources. And with that, about 50% of the patients who are coming in, and those are paying patients, are from St. Genevieve, but about 50% are coming from somewhere else. There's a couple reasons for that. One is lots of communities don't offer this treatment because they consider it to be an interference. It's not medicine the way that most physicians grew up practicing medicine and most hospitals are set up to practice medicine. So it's just different enough that they don't want to fool with it. And the other thing is that the stigma. Lots of people don't want to seek psychiatric or addiction treatment too close to home. These people know me. Well, they knew you were having trouble with substance use anyway, so coming in and getting help should not be worse than them seeing you in a state where substance use is influencing your behavior. But it does, and there are people who judge, and even good people who had that judgmental moment. So we talked. You heard earlier about heavy substance use can inflict physical, neurological, and psychological effects on the user, so I'm not going to beat that drum too much. But the idea is giving that person control of their lives again. I think if I had to sum it up with one thing that I really want to do for these people, it's give them control of their own lives again. Because they're out of control. They're making choices based on things, the chemicals, the physical structure, their social isolation. Choices are being made around them or instead of by them. So restoring that ability to make their own good choices in their own self-interest is the number one thing that we do. So the mediators of coping, the idea of helping give them some hope, restore family and social support where that's possible. Spiritual and religious belief is incredibly important. If you don't believe there's something to be had, both in this life and the next, you're not going to reach out and try and recover that position. And then psychosocial complications, we mentioned that before. I'm running up on 1 o'clock. I'm going to try and be judicious with your time, and you can read some of these slides that are fascinating, but they are detailed. And so we do want to have patients participate in their care. They do have some responsibilities. But patients with diminished capacity may still be able to make good choices. And we want to encourage that as much as possible and reinforce that. And they can make some of these other choices out of just that desperation. Going forward, the idea of identifying need, that's what we're going to be able to do with this community services agency, is to continue to identify the needs, build the networks, and add gap services that we can identify. I think that's one of our biggest opportunities here, to continue to build the community in St. Genevieve County. I've never seen a place where you can build, where you already have this level of a sense of community, and to be able to continue to build on that is incredibly valuable. And so I think we've got an opportunity to continue that sense of community. One of the reasons I wanted to recruit OBs is because I want to help catch the littlest ones. You can't undo the rest of your life what happens to you in your first 5 years of medication or surgery or therapy. So the idea that we build something from that age where people don't fall through the cracks as much as humanly possible, but for those people who have or need some help, continue to do patient care that includes identifying who has the need, help them plan, engage them, connect with all the resources, contract so that they can achieve some success, treat, test, and refer. And there are going to be some times where disengagement is the only thing that we have left, because if they just refuse, we can't force people to do anything, but they still have to make that choice at some level. And to the degree we can help them make that choice, we want to do that. So the goals include setting immediate goals, including pain control and symptom control, intermediate goals of getting to a treatment center or connecting with other resources. Long term, I want to live a life that doesn't include substance use. And then end of life, that's something that we need to approach from time to time as well. But giving them those choices, building a team around them, that's one of the things I think we need to do as a hospital, is continue to work and be a central point for building up that community as much as possible. And then helping that environment, avoiding stigma, building up the networks to keep people from falling through the cracks, generating those interests that bring them back into the community, and helping avoid the vulnerabilities as much as possible. So we're not 100% back on track, but I did want to give an opportunity for questions, or if there's anything that I can further explain. I've stunned them into silence. Silence is very interesting.
Welcome very well, and everyone's presentations have been really on one another. So, Dr. Foster, for your testimony. Next up, we have Tim.
We do?
Yes.
You sure?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. All right.
So earlier I mentioned about recovery-friendly workplaces and how they have a space in our community and a role to help our community members succeed and support them through recovery. And Brandon touched on that and how his employer helped him and ultimately led him to the right place. And so I've met and gotten to know Tim and learned about the things that he does at Tower Rock Stone. Did I say that right? And they're an example to follow. So I'll let him introduce himself and talk a little bit about their approach.
All right. I'm a walker and a talker, so I got to get untied here. No presentation. I hope you're not disappointed. So my name is Tim Double-Air. I've been the Health and Safety Director out at Tower Rock Stone here for about 15 years now. I've been employed there. November will be my 34th year out there. And just here to tell you a little story about how we work with our employees. And quite frankly, we have been a recovery-friendly workplace, I believe, long before I've ever really started hearing the term. Going back probably close to 25 years or so, we've had in place a program where if an employee recognizes that they have a problem and they want to seek help on their own, we have allowed them to take up to 1 year off. They can go through their processes and go through whatever they need to do. That can be medical, that can be mental, that it doesn't matter to us. Just come to us, tell us that you're having a problem and you need some time off to get it straightened out. And we have been giving them up to a year off without them having to worry about losing their position where they were as far as their longevity with the company. Now, they don't necessarily get a year of longevity if they're not there, but they don't lose their position where they were when they went out to get help. We've been doing that forever. What, Bill, 25 years or more?
Yeah, probably.
I refer to Bill a lot because Bill and I were co-employees for a long time and worked very closely together in the safety department. And sometimes his memory's a little better than mine. So I lean on him a little bit. There's no question about it. I'm going to say about 10 years ago, I guess. 10, 11, 12 years ago, something like that, we officially changed our procedures on, and it kind of started out in the disciplinary side. We are a bargaining agreement facility, so we have union laborers, and we are under a bargaining agreement. So, again, like we said, 12, 13 years ago, we changed our bargaining agreement a little bit, particularly with what we were seeing as the oncoming of more different types of, back then we used to call them illegal drugs. And what we did was we put into place where if on the disciplinary side of things, if we determined that you were under the influence or had in your system one of these illegal drugs, that instead of just immediately firing you, we would start what is called a 45-day program where these folks are allowed and given resources to get cleaned up, seek help, find resources to help them. We provide resources as far as names and places and things like that to go. Go seek help. Let us know what you're doing. Keep up with us. We want to know who you're seeing, what your program is, what you're going through. And then any time after that 45 days, whether you've completed your program or you've completed your recovery or whatever it is, anytime after that 45-day period, if the employee could test clean, they were allowed to come back to work. And then, of course, we kept track with, okay, where are you at in your program? Were you still seeing this person? Have you completed your program? How you doing? You know, we I guess in these 10 or 12 years, I think I've personally handled maybe 6, 7 cases through this program, and they're all still employees. They're all still good employees. And I think one of the things that I can't speak for them, but one of them is a very good friend of mine, and basically what he says is, you guys worked with me. You gave me the opportunity to get my life back on track. I appreciate that greatly. There was a period of my time where I didn't give a crap about my job because I was under that influence. But you gave me the opportunity to realize how important that job was to me, how important that job was to my family, and you also let me know how important I was as an employee. So we have found that the folks that go through this period in their life come back to be very good, very appreciative, very loyal employees. I don't know yet at this point how well this is going to work with, I'm going to show my age here, but the younger generation. We haven't really ran across one of those situations yet. Most of the people who have gone through this program, I'm going to say now, are probably in their 40s, 50s. I really don't see it not working for anybody at this point. But us old-timers are still learning the attitudes of the youngsters and how those things work and how their minds work and so on and so forth. I'm sure it's a challenge everybody here faces. But all in all, I'm very proud of our program. I'm very happy with our program. We have helped and retained at least 5, 6, 7 really good employees to this day are still very good, reliable employees. In fact, one of our cases right now, he is probably working in one of the more strategic locations out there, wherein there's no secret about a rock quarry. Everybody in this community knows what it takes to get rock. You drill a hole, you put in explosives, you blast it. That's the way it works.
Pick up rocks.
You make little ones out of big ones all day long. But one of the very strategic parts of that whole process is actually getting the pattern that you're going to use for an explosion right. And one of our employees who have gone through the program is now one of our drillers, and he works every day, very importantly, laying out these drill patterns and getting that piece of equipment on spot and drilling to the right depth. It takes a little bit of math, it takes a little bit of common sense, and on top of all of that, it takes that experience that Tory's what, 25-year man now? 25, 30-year man? He knows that quarry in and out. He knows those ledges. He knows how that rock in this ledge breaks. He knows how that rock in this ledge acts in pressure. He knows all those things. And if we had just dismissed Tory right out of the chute, we'd have lost all of that experience. We'd have lost all. Now I have an employee, still have an employee, that I can tell him what I want. We can tell him what we want, and we can trust him to go out and do it. Shows up every day, works every day. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And Tory has expressed numerous times, he just, thank you, how grateful he is for us to at least giving him the opportunity to make an oops and come back from making that oops. So that's kind of our story. I've been living it for 10, 12, 15 years now, and it's just been within the last couple of years it's kind of like, wow, we were kind of forward thinking back then, weren't we? You know, good job. But yeah, I mean, that's us. There's not a whole lot more to tell about my story, our story, but any questions, my gosh.
But did that come, and I know you guys are probably Mill union workers involved in the union.
I'm not.
You're not?
No,
Have you never been in the union?
I'm always company.
Okay, so you were always, that's my question. Did that come, when that started, did that come, where did that start? Did it start on your level, or did that start corporate?
I think there was a cooperation and a collaboration between corporate and union. All of our bargaining agreements obviously are hashed out between those two entities. And again, I don't know who the foreseer was, but golly, they put it together. And
Well, that's my whole point, because I have so many people come to me because they get, and it's easy to get a felony charge when you're doing something stupid and drugs. And if you get a felony charge, there's companies in this town, they won't even take a look at you because of that felony. And here's a guy that's overcome that, and what a waste. And what you said, that employee became, those 7 guys became good employees. And we're struggling and we're turning people away because.
well, not only did they become good employees, they were good employees.
Yeah, but they got messed up.
They
Right.
become not so good employees, and now they're even better employees.
Right, right. From their experience, and what you learned, it's been beneficial. I hope that goes on, past you 2 old guys.
Oh, I think it will.
Probably on the way out.
Well,
Here.
you know, I'm under 5 years now. I'm old enough for Social Security, but not quite old enough for Medicare. So that's kind of where I'm at.
And did the union help them with the expense of that recovery? I'm sure they didn't get paid, but did the union?
They did not get paid.
No, but I'm talking about healthcare, the health.
Did the union, was there any monetary, is there any monetary available?
Through Blue Cross Blue Shield, there is a weekly benefit. It's not much, but it is something. It's like.
But the rehab, did they pay for the rehab?
Yeah.
Okay.
Our insurance does the rehab, and then there's a disability portion of our insurance, is like $300.
I'm a little gray on the union side of healthcare because it's different than the company side healthcare.
Yeah, they're all about, our insurance is all about.
And I'll also say too, that on the district level at, with LIUNA, you call it, Laborers International, there are still out there a lot of labor unions that see an employee or a worker who has been, quote unquote, caught as a useless employee, that they are relieved immediately. And I find that quite interesting. And quite frankly, I applaud Local 830 and the district level here in this area for at least seeing that these aren't useless people. They deserve a chance to get better. There's a lot of locals and a lot of districts that won't do that, especially if they're what they call working out of the hall.
Well, my hope too is that with the labor shortage, you know, the amount of people that want to, the other side of it is the lady talked about the amount of people that are in drug rehab that are, you know, between the ages of 20 and 50 that are able-bodied people that can't work because of the rehab, because of the mess that they made of their lives.
The stigma.
Well, not only the stigma, but that are in rehab, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, their drug rehab programs, hundreds of thousands of people that are messed up and can't work.
Yes.
And that's great that you guys did that. I wish everybody did that. And then
Well-
you'll see, I think you'll start seeing a trend towards that because it's a big number out there. There's a bunch of people that could be a workforce.
Well, I agree with you in the fact that I think especially with the workforce issues we're seeing right now, that this is going to become more and more common. But gosh, I'm sad that it took that to get there. You know, but I guess whatever means justifies the end, I guess. If it helps and makes things better, then that's what we're all here for. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Yes.
Do you share what you did or how your policy works, or is that kind of off limits, or is it just your company and you share what?
Well, I mean, it's our company and there's nothing proprietary about it. But again, as I stated, it's when the 45-day, I refer to it as the 45-day program. When that comes into play, that is generally based on a disciplinary action, meaning either through a random drug screen or through an incident or accident at work. We tested and we found these substances in their system. And that is when the 45-day program kicks in. So, but again, going back even farther, with the 1-year program that we've had in place for 25 years, goodness, just come to us, talk to us, tell us you need some help. We'll get you pointed in the right direction, and you've got a full year to get things worked out, and it will not hurt your standing here at the company in any way, shape, or form. Get better, come back. That's kind of how that works. So, did that answer what you were after?
Written policy procedures, what those are, when those incidents happen, and how do you follow that out, as far as policy procedures?
Again, it is actually a part of the bargaining agreement. It's not a quote-unquote company policy, so it is part of the bargaining agreement. And generally, to follow through with it, it's usually just me. I'll ask them, how you doing? Where you at? Where we going? You ready to get tested again? You ready to come back? It's mostly just me talking with them, working with them. So there's not many of us on the company side out there, so we all wear a lot of hats, and we all kind of cross into helping each other out, but for the most part, I've kind of handled most of that.
What if they get to their year and then they relapse or whatever? Do you get another year, or it just hasn't happened, or?
Unfortunately, because this program is part of the disciplinary procedures, it's a 2-strike and you're out. Unfortunately. I have not yet had any issues with anybody who has gone through it to have a problem reoccurring. And maybe that's because, I don't know what that's because. Maybe it's because we gave them enough support that we didn't abandon them. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? Good. I need to get off my knee. I think I blew out my MCL, so I'm kind of hobbling.
Thank you, Tim. What a great example. Schools includes people that deliver health services, non-for-profit agencies, organizations. small business, bigger business. We're really looking into making this a really well-rounded type of committee so that we can move forward in the best interest of everyone, not just those at school, not just those at the hospital.
Our recovery work other workplace like this. Oh, we have 2 minutes to provide some information about what we've got.
Yeah, we actually do have I have a little bit of time, a little bit of cushion. So if you would like to talk a little bit about that. Yes.
Thank you very much. I just want to say thank you. I'm so impressed that I got to finally meet Tim. We've met online. I'm Doug Swanson with the University of Missouri Extension. I'm a labor education workforce development specialist. I work out of the St. Louis area. And I'm here today to promote something that I did not think I was going to be doing. I never saw my life getting involved in recovery from the workforce. I came to work for the University of Missouri in 2017 after working a quarter of a century for labor unions. I thought I was going to spend my time working on the worker shortage you mentioned. COVID did cause this. We've been tracking this for 25 years. It's not COVID related. But I found a conversation we had in St. Louis took me to this place of recovery and its impact on the workforce. And like you said about the worker shortage, we're just a little over halfway through 80 million people leaving the workforce. Baby boomers retired. When the first baby boomer was eligible for retirement, it constituted 25% of the workforce. By the time the last baby boomer leaves the workforce, we're going to look back at today as the good old days. Because we haven't had a replacement population growth since 1973. Last year we had the lowest immigration in the nation's history. A colleague of mine looked at the 2010-2020 Missouri census data based on his analysis. By the end of this decade, we are going to be 50,000 workers short in this state compared to when we started this decade. That's with the high school graduations factored in. So even if we don't create another job, we're going to be 50,000 workers short in this state by the end of this decade. So what they're doing at Tower Rock is, I've been all over the states singing the phrases. They're a great example of being forward thinking. For all the employers who are still looking for that perfect apple, that nice golden apple, reaching past all the ones that maybe not look as quite as nice, but taste just as sweet, you're out of business unless you change your practices. So, I've got over the table, I'm happy to give you more information on recovery from the workforce, and I can give you my contact information, but most importantly, I'd like to ask for your help. Last year, we partnered with the State Chamber of Commerce, and we surveyed businesses. 617 businesses in the state of Missouri responded to a questionnaire on how addiction is impacting the workforce. This new survey we just launched last week, and there's a QR code right here. You can snap it with your camera, go right to it, share this with your friends. This is for workers. Whether you're in recovery, whether you know anybody in recovery, whether you can spell recovery, it doesn't matter. We want workers' perspectives. We want to see if they align with what businesses are saying or they miss connections. What we hear anecdotally is people who get into recovery who can't get back into meaningful employment, family supportable employment, as barriers, And when you've already been in the bottom and trashed your life due to addiction, how can you not think about going back when the only thing you can get is a part-time job at minimum wage? You can't support your family. I can't imagine how devastating that would be. So the importance, we've heard a lot of great things today about the importance of having supportive employers. That's what we're trying to get at with this survey. And that's what we're trying to build the data so we can go to, and we have some great quotes on Tower Rock in this press release too, because they are a great example. Tim has talked about how, very dangerous work that they do with Tower Rock. But I think, in one of the interviews we did with Tim, he said most of their accidents are with the younger, newer employees. It's those long senior ones who learn how to work safely. That's breaking the stigma. Oh, they're in recovery. They can't be safe. Yes, they can be. He's proved it. They can't be reliable. Yes, they are. They found it to be true. These are the examples. If you have other businesses in your community that are doing work like Tower Rock, please share that with me. Because what we're trying to do is we're in the second year of our grant. So we've built out the tools, and I can give you our web address. I'm happy to share that with you. I want to hear your feedback on, are these tools helpful? What we really need is more businesses, more Missouri businesses like Tower Rock that we can point to as examples where it's worked. We have examples from 17, 18, 19 other states that have done remarkable work. But nothing moves Missouri business owners like Missouri business successes. And that's what we're trying to build up now. So thank you all for being here today. And thank you all for your interest in this very important topic. And again, thank you, Tower Rock, for doing such a stellar job of being an example of doing the right things for the right reasons. The humanitarian side, we're losing too many people. I get into the cost side. Missouri Hospital Association, they did a study a couple years ago. It's costing the state of Missouri $1.2 million an hour. That's what they did. Opioid addiction is costing the state of Missouri $1.2 million an hour, every day. So if you don't think it's touching your lives, it is. Think of the wages that aren't being paid to the 10% of the workforce. Some parts of our demographic are seeing 10% of the workforce not working due to work-related injuries, pain management, or addiction. That's wages that aren't being paid. That's taxes that aren't being collected. That's Main Street money that's not being spent on our businesses. So if you think it's not touching your lives, it is. So thank you all for being here today. I'm at the yellow table. Stop by and say hello.
Okay, so we are actually done for today. I hope that you are inspired. I hope that you would like to follow up with Mary and I and join our team when we do start thinking about what we do with that money that is going to come, hopefully, into the county, and that we can make a great impact with that. We are going to do a drawing. For those of you that stayed and signed in, if you haven't signed in, please do. We're going to draw 8 names for some gas cards.
Wow.
Yes. Did everyone sign in? Okay. If you haven't, okay, that's perfect. And then I'm also going to hand out on your way out a QR code for a survey. If you would please take the time to fill this out, give us some feedback, some ideas, some pointers, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever it is that you would like to tell us about today. We will take those comments seriously, and we will take it into consideration as we move forward. All right, so we're going to do this. Mary's got an app on her phone that kind of randomly draws numbers. If you notice when you were signing in, there's a number next to each line, so that's how we'll pick the winner. So who's the first winner, Mary? Bailey. She's gone, so she doesn't get it. unless someone wants to get that to her. Okay. Yay! So this is for Bailey. Rick from Community Counseling. Yes, this is for you. Who's next? Eric, yay! give out, and we thought, yes, cards. Daniel Gilbert. Oh. Linda. Alrighty, thank you all for attending. I will be standing at the door making sure you get one of these. Again, if you don't know how QR codes work, you put your camera over it and a link pops up, you click it and it'll take you right to where we need you to go. I will also get the information from today to you in an email. You'll have contact info for our speakers and as well as their presentations to refer back to. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Molly Reed, and I am with McCowan Place Eating Disorder Centers in St. Louis and also Kansas City. We offer primary eating disorder treatment to adolescents and adults. We take kids as young as 10 and offer a higher level of care, so residential and then day treatment options for eating disorder treatment. And we're really excited to be here today and participate in this community event.
My name is Danielle Gilbert. I work with AMFM Healthcare, which stands for Mission for Michael. We are residential primary mental health treatment, specializing kind of more in mood and thought disorders and dual diagnosis. I'm here today to just kind of be a resource for the community. My life has personally been affected by mental health and substance use disorder, and so I want to be here just to be able to allow people an opportunity to find resources that they need and potentially just get them connected and let them know that there is another side of life and that recovery is possible.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Colton Baker. I'm an individual in long-term recovery from substance use and mental health. I'm here today with Sound Lake Recovery. We have a full system of care, including detox, residential, partial hospitalization, outpatient, recovery housing, as well as a family program called New Dawn. If you need any resources, you can call me. My cell phone number is 314-287-8937. Thank you.
Whenever you're ready.
So I'm Leah Woods. I am with Footprints to Recovery. I basically help people get into treatment at all different levels of care. I am also a part of Resources to Recovery, which is sponsoring the conference today. I'm also a part of St. Louis Crush, which is St. Louis Crush stands for Community Resources United to Stop Heroin. Basically what I do is I'm vice president of that organization as well, so helping people in every aspect of their lives in addiction.
All right. I'm Rick Strait with the Community Counseling Center. We are the community mental health agency. We also provide some substance use treatment, and just happy to be at this conference looking at the community coming together to treat this substance use crisis.
I'm Jennifer Mueller, Director of St. Genevieve County Health Department. We're part of this event because we have marketing available to the public at the Health Department if you need it.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Weber with the Aviary Recovery Center. We offer inpatient and outpatient treatment for dual diagnosis and we're substance use disorder primary. I'm here at this conference just offering a resource to those pretty much across the state of Missouri that need